Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change not just one life, but the world of everyone it touches. It was a cold morning in late autumn, and the small town outside Chicago was just waking up. The sky was gray, and the wind carried the smell of rain. Inside Harper's Diner, the air was warm, filled with the sound of clinking cups, the smell of fresh coffee, and the chatter of early customers. It was the kind of place where truck drivers, factory workers, and locals came every morning, sitting at the same spots they always did. Behind the counter, moving quickly, but with a smile that never faded, was Lena Brooks. She was 28, with tired eyes and hands that never seemed to stop. She had been working at the diner for 3 years, ever since her husband left, leaving her to raise her little girl Emma, all by herself. Every day started the same. Wake up at 5, make breakfast for Emma, drop her off at her neighbor's house, then hurry to the diner before the morning rush began. Lena wasn't rich, not even close. Her shoes were worn out, her uniform had a few coffee stains she couldn't get rid of, and her old car sometimes refused to start. But she had a strong heart and a gentle nature. Everyone who came to the diner liked her. She remembered people's names, how they liked their coffee, and even the small details about their lives. When she smiled, it wasn't fake. It was the kind of smile that made people feel seen. That morning, the diner was busier than usual. The cook, Benny, was shouting out orders to pancakes. 1 bacon, hold the eggs. The coffee machine hissed, and Lena was trying to keep up. She carried 3 plates in one hand and balanced 2 mugs in the other. Her hair kept falling into her face, and she brushed it back with her wrist. Still smiling at one corner booth, 2 old men argued about baseball. At another, a young couple sat close, sharing pancakes. Everything felt ordinary until the black SUV pulled up outside. It wasn't the kind of car people usually saw around Harper's Diner. It was shiny, expensive, and out of place among the rusty pickup trucks. The door opened, and a tall man in a long dark coat stepped out. He had sharp features, neatly combed hair, and a serious expression. When he walked in, the little bell above the door jingled softly, and the chatter in the diner quieted just a bit. People recognized him, even if they didn't say anything. Ethan Cole, the billionaire. His face had been on magazine covers and local news stories. He was one of the youngest tech investors in the country, known for his massive company, Cole Industries. No one expected to see a man like him in a small-town diner. But what caught everyone's eye wasn't just Ethan. It was the boy with him. A small, thin child, around 12 years old, sitting in a wheelchair. The boy had light brown hair and large, curious eyes that looked around the diner nervously. His hands shook slightly as he tried to move his chair forward. Lena noticed it right away, the stiffness in his movements. The careful way his father adjusted the handles behind him, Ethan guided his son to a corner booth, helped him sit comfortably, and then took a seat across from him. The boy smiled up at his father, and Ethan smiled back, but there was something heavy in his eyes. It wasn't sadness exactly, more like quiet exhaustion. The kind of look that said he was tired of pretending everything was fine. Lena wiped her hands on her apron and walked over, holding a small notepad. "Good morning," she said warmly. "What can I get you folks today?" The boy looked up at her, then quickly down again. Ethan answered softly. 2 hot chocolates, please. "And maybe some pancakes for him?" Lena smiled. "Good choice. We make them fluffy here." She winked at the boy, and for a second, he smiled back. As she walked away, Lena couldn't help glancing over her shoulder. The boy, Max, as she later learned, was struggling to sip from his cup. His hand trembled, spilling a bit of the hot chocolate on his coat. Ethan leaned forward to help, but Max shook his head stubbornly. "I can do it," he whispered. Ethan nodded but looked helpless. Lena's heart tightened. Without thinking, she grabbed a clean napkin and walked back. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said gently, kneeling beside Max. "Let me help a little." She dabbed at the spill, careful not to make him feel embarrassed. Then she helped him adjust his jacket and moved his cup closer, steadying it so he could drink easily. Ethan watched in silence. Most people avoided moments like this. They didn't know how to act around Max. They either stared too long or pretended he wasn't there. But this waitress, this stranger, treated Max like any other kid. No pity, no awkwardness. Just kindness. Max looked up at her again, this time with a shy smile. "Thank you," he murmured. "You're welcome," Lena said softly. "You've got great manners." She smiled and stood up, heading back toward the counter. Ethan's eyes followed her for a long moment. He was a man used to boardrooms, business meetings, and expensive dinners where people only spoke to him because of his money. But here in this tiny diner, someone had just shown his son a kind of care he rarely saw: simple, human care. It touched something deep in him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. When Lena brought their food, she chatted a little, telling Max how her daughter loved pancakes too and always tried to make faces out of them with blueberries. Max laughed, and Ethan felt his chest tighten again. That laugh was rare. He hadn't heard it that freely in months. As the morning went on, the diner stayed busy, but Lena always found a moment to check on Max. She refilled his drink, brought him extra syrup, and treated him like a friend. When it was time for them to leave, Max looked sad. "Do we have to go already?" he asked his father. Ethan smiled faintly. "We'll come back another time." Lena smiled too. "You better," she said. "Next time, pancakes are on me." Ethan nodded politely, but there was something in his eyes: gratitude, respect, maybe even admiration. He pulled out his wallet and left a generous tip on the table. When Lena went to pick it up, she froze for a second. It was a $100 bill. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked out the window, but the black SUV was already pulling away. As she stood there holding the bill, Lena didn't think about the money. She thought about the boy, his shy smile, his bravery, his father's quiet sadness. She didn't know their story, but something in her heart told her that this morning had meant more than either of them realized. Outside, the clouds began to break, letting a thin beam of sunlight fall across the diner sign. Inside, Lena returned to her work, humming softly, unaware that her life and the lives of those two strangers were already beginning to change forever. The next morning, Harper's Diner was quieter than usual. The rain from last night had washed the streets clean, and sunlight was streaming through the windows, making the metal napkin holders shine. Lena had been working since dawn, refilling sugar jars and wiping tables. Her hands were a little sore, but she didn't mind. She liked the early hours when the air still smelled of coffee and pancakes, and the world felt calm for a while before the rush began. She didn't expect to see the same black SUV again. When she heard the bell above the door ring and looked up, her heart skipped for a moment. It was them, the billionaire and his son, Ethan Cole and little Max. She wasn't sure if they'd ever come back after that first morning, but there they were, walking through the door again. Ethan looked a little less serious today, and Max was smiling faintly as his father pushed his wheelchair to the same corner booth. Lena quickly grabbed 2 menus, even though she already knew what they liked. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said cheerfully as she walked over. "Back for more pancakes?" Max grinned, his voice soft but excited. "Yeah, the blueberry ones." "You got it," she said with a wink. "Extra syrup." He nodded, and Ethan smiled at her kindness. "That sounds perfect." "Thank you, Lena." She liked the way he said her name, polite but genuine. It wasn't in the same tone that rich people usually used when talking to servers. It was warm, respectful, almost grateful. While Lena went to place their order, she kept thinking about them. There was something about that boy, the way he tried so hard to do things on his own. How proud he looked when he managed to lift his cup or cut his pancake. It reminded her of her daughter, Emma. Kids had the same spark, no matter who they were or where they came from. A few minutes later, she returned with 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate and a plate of warm pancakes. "Here you go, my favorite customer," she said to Max, setting the plate in front of him. Max tried to hold his fork, but his hand shook again. The fork slipped and clattered softly on the plate. A few people from nearby tables turned to look. Ethan reached across the table to help him, but Max looked frustrated. His eyes were wet and he mumbled, "I can do it, Dad." Ethan hesitated. "I know, buddy," he said quietly. But before he could finish, Lena stepped forward. She didn't want Max to feel embarrassed. She picked up the fork gently and smiled. "You know what? I think these pancakes are trying to fight you. They look too big for one person." Max giggled a little, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. They're not fighting me, he said shyly. Oh, really? Lena said playfully. Then show me how strong you are. I'll hold the plate still for you. She leaned down beside him, steadying the plate, while Max carefully cut a small piece. His hand shook, but this time the fork didn't fall. He lifted the bite to his mouth successfully, and his face lit up in triumph. There you go, she said softly. Told you could do it. Ethan watched the whole thing without saying a word. His chest tightened with emotion. It had been so long since he'd seen Max smile like that. Usually, people stared or whispered when they saw his son struggling. Sometimes, they avoided looking at them altogether. But this waitress, this woman who didn't even know them, didn't look away. She didn't act uncomfortable. She treated Max like any other kid. After a few minutes, Lena wiped some chocolate off Max's sleeve and straightened his jacket. Her movements were gentle and natural, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. There, she said with a grin. Now you're good as new. Max smiled at her again. Thank you, he said softly. Lena's heart melted a little. You're very welcome, sweetheart. Then she stood up and went back to the counter, humming quietly to herself. She didn't notice Ethan, still watching her from across the room, his expression thoughtful. He had seen so many people act differently when they learned who he was, either overly nice or distant. But Lena had no idea who he really was, and that made her kindness even more real. When their meal was finished, Ethan motioned for the check. As Lena brought it over, he said, You're very good with him. She shrugged shyly. Oh, kids are easy. You just have to talk to them like people. Ethan smiled faintly. Most people don't. Lena looked at Max, who was laughing at something on his tablet. He's a great kid, she said simply. You must be proud. I am, Ethan said softly. His eyes drifted to the window. He's been through a lot, but he keeps smiling. Lena could hear the weight in his voice, that quiet pain that comes from years of worry and love mixed together. She wanted to say something comforting, but she didn't want to sound nosy, so she just smiled. He's lucky to have you. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her tired face, her kind eyes, the way she spoke without judgment or pity. Maybe it's the other way around, he said quietly. She didn't quite know what to say to that. She just gave a small smile and collected the plates. As Ethan got up to leave, he placed a tip on the table again. Lena glanced at it, ready to thank him, but he stopped her. Please don't, he said gently. It's not about the money. It's about gratitude. Nodded, understanding without needing more words. Before leaving, Max waved at her. Bye, Miss Lena. Bye, champ, she said, waving back. Come back soon. I'll save the best pancakes for you. When they were gone, the diner felt strangely quiet. Lena stood at the window for a while, watching the SUV drive off down the road. She didn't know why, but something about that family stayed with her. There was a kind of sadness in the way Ethan moved, like a man who had everything the world could offer, but still felt empty. And the boy, sweet and brave, had eyes that carried both innocence and pain. Later that day, when her shift ended, Lena sat in her old car and thought about them again. She thought about how easy it is for people to walk past others without seeing what they're going through. She thought about Max's little hands, his effort, and the pride in his smile when he finally managed to eat on his own. She thought about Ethan, who looked like the kind of man who carried too many worries silently. She didn't know that Ethan was thinking about her too, thinking about how one small act of kindness had touched his heart more than all the money in the world. He couldn't stop replaying the moment when Lena bent down to help Max, not out of duty or pity, but out of simple goodness. That night, when Ethan tucked Max into bed, his son said sleepily, Dad, Miss Lena is nice. She didn't look at me weird. Ethan smiled, brushing Max's hair back. No, she didn't, he said softly. She saw you the way I see you. Can we go back there? Max asked, half asleep. Yes, Ethan whispered. We will. When Max drifted off to sleep, Ethan sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. He had spent years surrounded by people who pretended to care, who smiled because of his money. But today, in a small diner filled with coffee stains and laughter, He had seen something rare, real kindness, the kind that couldn't be bought. And as for Lena, she went to bed that night, exhausted but strangely happy. She didn't know why her heart felt so full. Maybe because helping that boy reminded her that small moments could matter, that sometimes a few kind words and a gentle touch could change someone's whole day. Neither of them knew it yet. But that simple moment, a waitress helping a boy in a diner, was the start of something that would change both of their worlds forever. The sky outside the diner was painted with soft evening colors. The golden light of the sunset poured through the windows, turning everything warm and peaceful. It was almost closing time at Harper's Diner. Only a few customers were left, slowly finishing their meals. Lena was wiping down tables, her back aching from the long day, when the door opened again. She looked up and couldn't help but smile. It was Ethan and Max. This was their third visit that week. Max was laughing as his father helped him inside. He waved at Lena the moment he saw her. "Hi, Miss Lena." "Well, look who's back," she said, setting her rag aside. "Couldn't stay away from my pancakes, huh?" Max giggled. "They're the best ones." Ethan smiled, his expression softer than before. He looked more relaxed now, as if something inside him had begun to heal a little. "I think he's addicted," he said quietly. "Well, that's the best kind of addiction," Lena replied, grinning. "Same booth?" "Of course," Ethan said, and wheeled Max toward their usual corner. After she took their order, Lena poured them coffee and hot chocolate and brought over a slice of pie on the house. She told Max it was her secret weapon for happy kids, which made him laugh again. The sound of that laugh filled the small diner and somehow made it feel brighter. When things slowed down, Lena came over to check on them. The other customers had left, and the soft hum of the fridge and quiet music from the radio filled the space. Ethan looked up at her. "You must be tired," he said kindly. She smiled and shrugged. "I'm always tired. Comes with the job. But I like it here. People talk. You get to hear so many stories." Ethan stirred his coffee. "Do you ever tell your own?" Lena looked surprised. Most customers didn't ask her personal questions, but something about Ethan's tone was gentle, curious, not pushy. She sat on the empty stool across from their booth and smiled faintly. "Not much to tell, really. Just life. It's not very fancy. I'd like to hear it anyway," Ethan said. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Well, I grew up around here. My mom worked in a grocery store, and my dad was a mechanic. They both passed away a few years ago. I got married young, had my little girl Emma, but her dad, well, he didn't stick around. So now it's just me and her." She laughed softly, not bitterly, but with acceptance. "Life gets hard sometimes, but you keep going. What else can you do?" Ethan nodded slowly. "You're strong," he said quietly. "A lot of people would have given up." Lena shrugged. "Maybe, but I've got a reason not to. Emma's everything. I want her to grow up knowing that even when things are tough, kindness still matters." Watched her as she spoke. There was something honest in her words. No self-pity, no drama, just truth. He realized how rare that was. He was used to people hiding behind fake smiles and perfect words. He took a sip of his coffee and said softly, "You remind me of my wife." Lena looked up surprised. "Your wife?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Her name was Claire. She passed away about 5 years ago. She was like you, kind, patient, never saw the world in terms of rich or poor. She just cared. About people. About life." His voice grew quiet. "When Max was born, the doctor said he might not walk or talk like other kids. It broke her heart, but she never gave up. She used to say that Max wasn't broken, he was just built differently." Lena felt her throat tighten. "She sounds amazing," she said softly. "She was," Ethan said, smiling sadly. "After she passed, I tried to do everything for Max, but it's hard. He needs constant care, and I have meetings, flights, business. I tried hiring people, but they always treated him like a job, not like a child." He paused, his eyes lowering. "Sometimes I feel like I fail him." Lena shook her head firmly. "No, you don't. You love him. That's what matters most. He knows it. I can tell. Ethan looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers for a long moment. He saw something there, understanding, compassion, warmth. He hadn't realized how much he needed someone to just listen. For years, his world had been made of polished offices and empty conversations. But now, sitting in this small diner, talking to a waitress with tired eyes and a kind smile, he felt something real. Max was busy drawing with crayons on a napkin while they talked. He looked up suddenly and said, "Dad, look. I drew Miss Lena and us eating pancakes." Lena laughed. "Oh wow, that's beautiful." "You're a real artist, Max," Ethan smiled, taking the napkin carefully. "We'll have to frame this," he said, and Max beamed with pride. After a while, Lena refilled Ethan's coffee. He leaned back in the booth, relaxing more than he had in a long time. "You know," he said quietly, "I've spent years building companies, making deals, chasing things that people say matter. But lately, I've been thinking maybe I missed what really does." Lena tilted her head. "Like what?" He smiled faintly. "Moments like this. Talking, laughing, watching my son smile. Simple things," Lena nodded. "Simple things are the real treasures. You don't notice them until you lose them." They sat there in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the soft hum of the diner. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, and the night air looked calm. For a brief moment, the world felt still. When it was finally time to close, Lena brought the check, but Ethan didn't reach for it right away. Instead, he said, "Lena, thank you for everything. You don't know how much this means to me and to Max." She smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't have to thank me. I just did what anyone should do." "Not everyone would," Ethan said seriously. "That's what makes you different." She blushed a little, not sure how to respond. "You're too kind." Ethan smiled gently. "No, just honest." He stood up, helped Max into his wheelchair, and reached into his pocket. He handed Lena a small white envelope. "For you?" he said. She frowned, shaking her head. "Oh no, please. You already tipped too much." "I can't take more." "It's not a tip," Ethan said. "Just something small." "For your daughter?" Lena hesitated, but finally took it. When she opened it later that night, she found not money, but a little drawing, the same napkin Max had been using, with all three of them smiling at a table full of pancakes. On the back, Ethan had written in neat handwriting, "Thank you for seeing us at night." As Lena drove home, she couldn't stop thinking about those words. "Thank you for seeing us." It sounded simple, but she understood exactly what he meant. Sometimes people with everything in the world just needed someone to look at them. Not as rich or important, but as human. When she reached home, Emma was asleep in bed, her tiny hand clutching her stuffed bear. Lena kissed her forehead and sat by the window for a while, looking out at the quiet street. She thought about Ethan's tired eyes, Max's brave little smile, and the story of a man who carried the weight of love and loss all at once. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt something stir inside her hope. She didn't know what would come next, but she felt like she had just met people who would somehow change her life forever, and far across town. Ethan was also awake, staring out of his window with the same thought in his mind that sometimes the most unexpected people enter your life for a reason you don't yet understand. But somehow, your world feels lighter because they did. The weeks after that quiet evening at Harper's Diner passed quickly. The weather was colder now, and every morning Lena had to scrape frost from her car windows before driving to work. Life went on as usual, early mornings, long hours, small tips, and the constant worry about paying bills. But something inside her felt a little lighter since meeting Ethan and Max. Their visits had become a small piece of happiness she looked forward to. Then one morning, when Lena arrived at the diner, Benny the cook waved a letter at her. "This came for you, Lena." "Looks official," he said, grinning. She frowned, taking the envelope. The paper was thick, white, and had a gold seal in the corner with the words Coal Industries Foundation printed neatly. Her heart skipped. Coal Industries, Ethan's company. But why would they be sending her anything? She tore it open with trembling hands. Inside was a short letter. "Dear Ms. Brooks." You have been recommended for a position within the hospitality division at Cole Industries Foundation. The role offers full benefits, paid training, and flexible hours. Please contact our HR department to schedule an interview. Sincerely, Human Resources Department, Cole Industries. Lena stared at the paper in disbelief. Her first thought was that it had to be a mistake. She was just a waitress in a small-town diner. Why would a big company like Cole Industries want her? Benny leaned over the counter. Wow, Lena. That's huge. You gonna go for it? I don't even know what this means, she said softly, her heart pounding. But deep down, she had a feeling she knew exactly who was behind it. That night, after her shift, Lena sat at her tiny kitchen table with the letter in front of her. Her daughter Emma was coloring beside her. Mommy, are you going to get a new job? Emma asked curiously. Lena smiled, brushing her daughter's hair back. I don't know, sweetie, maybe. It says I should call them. Then maybe we can get that pink bike I saw, Emma said with a hopeful grin. Lena laughed softly. Maybe, baby, maybe. The next day she gathered all her courage and called the number on the letter. A polite woman from HR answered, scheduled her interview, and told her to come to the Cole Industries office in the city that Friday. When Friday came, Lena wore her best clothes, a simple white blouse and a skirt that she ironed 3 times to make it look neat. She took the train to the city, feeling nervous every second. The Cole Industries building was massive, all glass and steel, shining in the morning light. She had never been anywhere so fancy before. The receptionist greeted her kindly and guided her to the interview room. Inside, 2 women and 1 man asked her questions about her work at the diner, her communication skills, how she handled stressful situations, and why she wanted the job. Lena answered honestly, her voice calm but sincere. She didn't try to sound impressive. She just spoke from her heart. I love helping people, she said. Whether it's serving coffee or making someone smile, I think kindness is the best part of any job. When the interview ended, one of the women smiled. Thank you, Miss Brooks. We'll be in touch soon. Lena thanked them and left, her heart racing. She didn't know how she'd done, but she felt proud that she had at least tried. 2 days later, she got the call. She got the job, the woman on the phone told her. She would be working as an assistant event coordinator at the Cole Industries Foundation, helping plan charity events, community dinners, and fundraisers. It paid 3 times more than the diner and included health insurance, something she'd never had before. Lena cried quietly after hanging up. She couldn't believe it. All the years of struggle, of working late nights and skipping meals so her daughter could eat, and now, suddenly her life was changing. On her first day, she took the bus to the city again, this time dressed in her new uniform and clutching her small purse nervously. The office was beautiful, bright, open, filled with kind faces. Her manager, a woman named Claire Thompson, welcomed her warmly. We're happy to have you, Lena. Mr. Cole spoke very highly of you. Mr. Cole? Yes, Claire said with a knowing smile. He mentioned your name personally. For a moment, Lena didn't know what to say. She felt both shocked and touched. Ethan had done this quietly, without telling her. He had opened a door for her that she never even dreamed existed. That evening, as she left work, she saw a familiar black SUV parked outside. Ethan was leaning against it, smiling. First day done? He asked. She laughed, still holding her coat tightly. You did this, didn't you? He shrugged, a playful look in his eyes. I might have mentioned your name. But you got the job yourself, Lena. I made sure of that. She shook her head, smiling. Why would you do that for me? Ethan looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because sometimes good people deserve a chance. You gave my son kindness when you didn't have to. You made him feel normal? That's something I can never repay, but I can make sure you never struggle the way you have been.
Ow.
Lena felt tears sting her eyes. You didn't have to, I know, he interrupted gently. But I wanted to. They stood there for a moment, quiet, the city lights glowing around them. Then Max's voice came from the back seat. Miss Lena, guess what? I got an A on my art project. Lena laughed and bent down to see him through the window. I'm so proud of you, champ. You're amazing. Ethan smiled softly, watching the two of them. We were just about to get dinner. Would you like to join us? She hesitated, glancing at her worn-out shoes, then back at him. You sure? Absolutely, Ethan said. It's a celebration. First day of a new beginning, they went to a small restaurant nearby. Not fancy, just warm and friendly. Max talked the whole time about school, art, and his new wheelchair that he said could go super fast. Lena laughed more that evening than she had in months. As they were leaving, Ethan walked beside her. You know, he said quietly, my company helps hundreds of people every year. But helping you, it feels different. It feels right. Lena smiled. Maybe because this time it's not business. He nodded slowly. No, it's not business. It's something better. That night, when Lena went home, she found Emma waiting by the window, her little face full of excitement. Mommy, how was your new job? It was amazing, sweetheart, Lena said, hugging her tightly. It's the start of something good, Emma grinned. Can we get that pink bike now? Lena laughed. Soon, baby? Very soon. When Emma fell asleep, Lena sat by her bed, watching her peaceful face. For the first time in years, she didn't feel hopeless. She felt safe, secure, seen. Somewhere across the city, Ethan looked out from his office window, thinking about the woman who had reminded him that kindness could change lives, not just his son's, but his own too. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both felt it. Sometimes the smallest act of care can set off a chain of miracles. And for Lena Brooks, that miracle had just begun. Months passed since Lena had started her new job at the Coal Industries Foundation. Life, which had once been a daily struggle filled with worry and exhaustion, had changed in ways she never could have imagined. Each morning, she woke up earlier than she had at the diner, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She liked the feeling of walking into a bright, spacious office where people greeted her with respect, where her work was valued, and where she could finally see the results of her effort. Her daughter, Emma, had changed too. Lena had been able to move them into a small but comfortable apartment closer to the city. Emma now attended a better school, one with supportive teachers and plenty of friends. Lena could afford the little things she had always dreamed of giving her daughter: new clothes, books, and sometimes even a treat after school. But what made her happiest was seeing Emma smile freely, without the quiet worry Lena knew her child had carried. While money had been tight, Lena herself had grown in ways she didn't expect. Working at the foundation had opened her eyes to opportunities she never knew existed. She had a role in planning events, meeting important people, and organizing programs that helped children, families, and communities. She felt proud, not just because of the prestige or pay, but because her work mattered. For the first time, she felt like she was contributing to something bigger than herself, something meaningful. Ethan and Max had become a part of this new life in a way Lena hadn't anticipated. They continued visiting the foundation regularly, not just for work-related events, but also because they had become friends. Max had grown more confident thanks to Lena's kindness, and Ethan often watched him with a soft pride that never left his eyes. Max had a sparkle now, a mix of curiosity and joy that hadn't been there before. Lena loved seeing it. One crisp afternoon, the foundation was hosting a charity gala for children with special needs. Lena had been working on the event for weeks, coordinating volunteers, decorations, and schedules. She had spent hours making sure everything was perfect. And now, as she walked through the hall, she saw the results of her hard work. Children laughed and played, parents smiled, and staff moved efficiently around the room. Lena felt a deep satisfaction. This was her world now, a world she had never imagined for herself. Ethan approached her. His usual calm demeanor softened by a smile. "Everything looks perfect," he said, glancing around. "Thanks," Lena replied, her voice bright. "It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it." "You've done more than work," Ethan said. "You've made this place feel alive. People here, they feel it. They feel your heart in everything you do." Lena looked at him, surprised. "I just do what I can." "You do more than you think," Ethan said gently. "And that's why I wanted to meet with you tonight, after the event." Lena's heart skipped a beat. curiosity and anticipation rising inside her after the gala ended and the children were safely taken home. Ethan led Lena to a quiet corner of the hall. Max was already there, drawing quietly at a small table, his wheelchair pushed to the side. He looked up and smiled at her. "You ready for something special?" Ethan asked. Lena nodded, unsure what he meant. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Similar to the first one he had given her months ago. "I wanted to make sure you had something," he said softly. "Something that belongs to you, because you've given so much to others." Lena took it, her hands trembling. Inside was a certificate, not an award or a prize, but a recognition of her work at the foundation. It acknowledged her dedication, her compassion, and her positive impact on the children and families the foundation served. Beneath it, Ethan had written a personal note. "You didn't just change my son's world. You changed mine? Thank you for everything." Alina felt tears prick her eyes. She looked at Max, who grinned and gave her a thumbs up. She looked at Ethan, whose expression was sincere and unguarded, and she realized something profound. This was more than a job, more than recognition. It was a confirmation that kindness and dedication could truly change lives. From that moment on, Lena's confidence grew even stronger. She took on bigger projects, mentored new staff, and started thinking about how she could expand her impact. She began volunteering at local schools, teaching children how to organize events and work as a team. Passing on the lessons she had learned, every time she saw a child smile or a parent sigh in relief, she remembered Max in the diner. The small boy who had allowed her to make a difference simply by being himself. Ethan and Lena's friendship also deepened. They shared quiet lunches, discussed ideas for the foundation, and sometimes just talked about life. Ethan had learned to trust people in a way he hadn't before. Lena had shown him that not every gesture needed to be calculated or tied to wealth. Max had taught him that vulnerability and patience were just as important as business acumen. And Lena, through her simple acts of care and courage, had reminded him that the world was full of good people who deserved a chance. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Lena sat in her apartment, Emma beside her, and Max and Ethan visiting for dinner. The apartment was filled with laughter, the kind that echoed warmly off the walls and made everything feel safe and real. Lena realized that her life had transformed completely. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. She had stability, purpose, and a circle of people who truly valued her. Looking back, Lena knew that it all began with one ordinary moment in a small diner. One simple act of helping a boy zip up his jacket had set a chain of events into motion that neither she nor Ethan could have predicted. It reminded her that sometimes the smallest gestures have the biggest impact. One act of kindness, one moment of attention, one smile, it could ripple outward and change lives in ways he never expected. And while her life was now filled with meetings, events, and responsibilities, Lena never forgot that first morning with Max. She continued to visit the diner from time to time. Not for money or recognition, but because it reminded her of how far she had come and why she worked so hard. It was a place where a stranger had given her a chance to see the world differently, and she had taken that chance, transforming it into something lasting. Ethan watched all this quietly, sometimes from across a room during a foundation event, sometimes walking beside her as they planned new programs. He saw the growth in her, the courage, and the compassion that hadn't changed, even as her life had. He often thought about how one moment, one decision, could ripple through life. A single act of seeing someone for who they truly are, not for their status, money, or weakness, could alter destinies. Max, now happier and more confident than ever, often spoke about Lena at school, telling his friends that she was his hero. And Lena, seeing the boy's growth and joy, felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything money could buy. She had not only changed her own life, but had influenced the lives of those around her, creating a ripple effect that touched hearts by the time the year ended. Lena's world was entirely different from the one she had known just a few months ago. She had a career, security, and a supportive network. She had friends who respected her, a daughter who was thriving, In a bond with Ethan and Max that went beyond mere friendship, it was family by choice, built on trust, kindness, and shared experiences. And every time she saw Max smile, every time she witnessed the impact of her work, Lena remembered that first ordinary morning, the moment she knelt beside a little boy in a small diner, simply helping him zip his jacket. That single, quiet act had changed not only Max's world, but hers and Ethan's as well. It reminded her, forever, that even the smallest gestures of care, attention, compassion could lead to extraordinary change. Her life was no longer just a struggle to survive. It was full of hope, purpose, love, and laughter. And it was all because someone had taken the time to see a boy and his mother had taken the chance to help him. A reminder that kindness has a power that money, status, or fame can never match. Lena's world had truly transformed forever.